Hello, welcome to today's tutorial, and in this video I'll share with you a simple beginner project of a website. This project is actually a beginner project, so if you've already taken some courses or you have some knowledge on HTML, CSS or web development in general, you can wait for my subsequent videos. But this particular video is aimed at people who are fresh to web development. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and let's start learning. We are going to create some files with which we are going to work with. So first of all, I'm going to open my Visual Studio Code. I'll make it this big. All right. And then on my desktop, I'm going to create a file called Winter Wines. You can name it whatever you want to name it, but just remember or just keep note of the various names you are giving to your files and containers. So I'm going to call mine Winter Wines. After that, I'm going to drag and drop the folder inside my VS Code. In this folder, I'm going to create an HTML file called index.html. Then I'll create another file, style.css. This is where we are going to do our styling. Then finally, I'll create a folder called images, which will host our various images. So you can go back to the desktop and open the folder we just created, and you'll see the text file and folder present. So now let me open my images folder and drag and drop some images in there. Okay, so I have some images over here. I'm going to copy all and drop them inside my images folder. Okay, and when you go back to your VS Code and open the images folder, you can see all the images being present in the images folder in VS Code as well. So let me close that, and now we can start designing our web page. Using VS Code, I can just put in my syntax, my HTML syntax, by typing the exclamation mark and enter. Then we have this beautiful syntax over here. Now that we have this in our VS Code, let me space so that we can see clearly. The first thing I'm going to do is to rename the title of our project, and then I'm going to call it Winter Wines. Winter Wines. So this is going to be the title of our project. So let me open that with a live server, and this is an extension I downloaded. So if you don't know where that is, you can come here in your VS Code, click on it, and then type live preview. We have the live server also. You can download that one if you want, live server, and then you download this. And what it does is that anytime we make a changes on the website or in our code, it reflects directly in our browser without going to refresh it. So I'm going to right click and then open with live server. So now we have our project over here. So let me move this to a new window. Okay, and minimize this. All right, so now we have our project side by side. So from the finished project, we can see that on top over here we are having a container or a section with a darker background, and on its left we have Winter Wines standing in for our logo, and on the right side we have the sign in button. So what we are going to do is that we are going to call this the nav container. Assuming this is our nav container, how best we can easily code what we have over here out is that we divide this nav container into two. This side is the left side and this side should be the right side, and the left side contains our logo and the right side contains our sign in button. So we are going to replicate the same thing, the same ideology in our codes. So first of all, we come into our body, and then what we'll do is that, let me space in here a little bit. What we'll do here is that I'm going to create a container called nav container, and then in that nav container we'll split it and have the left side and then the right side. So we go about it this way. Say nav underscore container. So now we have this container created, and inside this container we are first of all going to have our container left or nav left. So I'm going to say container dot nav left, which is going to be the left side of our navigation container. Then I'll come down and create the right side also. Say container nav underscore right. So now we have the left side and the right side. Let's see how that looks like. Let's say H3 or H2, whatever it is. Let's say left, and then let's copy this and paste over here. Let's call this right. So in our browser, we can see the left side and then we can see the right side. Okay, so from our finished project, the left side has this logo over here called Winter Wines, whereas the right side has the sign-in. So let's go ahead and design the left side. It says Winter Wines. All right, so we have our winter wines on the left side, but from the finished project as well, we can see that this one has a red color, whereas winter has a white color. So I'm going to span this particular statement out and then make it have a different color. So I'm going to say span, and then I'll put our wines in this span tag. So we have double over here, delete one. All right, we are good to go. So in our styles.css, we are going to design this and make the color. So I think we are done with the navigation left container. So we can go or move on to the navigation right. And a careful look at the finished project, we can see that this is actually a button that links us to, or that's supposed to link us to the sign-in page. So if I click on this, it's supposed to take me to the sign-in page. And so for that matter, we are going to use an anchor tag. Okay, we are going to use an anchor tag to create that link over there. So let me delete this line and then let me put that in a p tag. Now let me use the anchor tag, which is the a. Now let me do the hash ref. Since we won't create the actual sign-in page in this video, let me just leave this link as blank, or I can put in hash over there. Then I'll call this link sign in. So there's going to be a sign in, and when you look at it, you can see that it has a different color and then it's been underlined. So this indicates that we can click on it and get to our sign-in page. And before we move on, what I want us to do is to put all of these inside a nav section or a nav container. So before we do the styles, we can put it inside a nav container this way. So now let's copy all of these, the left and right. Let's cut and then paste inside our nav container. So we still have the same thing over here. There is no changes at all. So what I want us to do now is to begin styling the nav container. So before then, what we'll do is to link this HTML to the CSS. So we are going to link the HTML to the CSS. So in order to link our CSS to this index.html file, we'll come into the header tag and then do the link. So we are going to link a style sheet, and that style sheet can be located in our main folder. So we'll just say styles.css. We'll just link it this way and then we'll close this tag over here. Now the CSS should be linked to our HTML. So we can now go into the CSS file over here and start doing the designs or styling our web page. Before we even start styling our nav container, we can declare some general styles for our page. So we are going to say box sizing should be border box, and then the padding should be 0. If you don't understand this, you can just follow through as we go on. You would see what they are. So the list style should be none, and then we would say the outline should be 0. Then we are going to align items to the center. All right, so these are going to be our general styles for our web page. So now the next thing we are going to tackle is our nav container, the nav container that we created, because from the finished project we can see that this one is on the left, this one is on the right with a very dark background, and then the sign in button has a very nice hover effect, and this has a red color. So we can do the same over here in our project as well. So now let's deal with the nav container, which is this one, this nav container that we created. We can deal with it first. So let me put that by the side. Let me split that to the left. Okay, let me close it over here. Alright, so now we are going to deal with this navigation over here, the elements inside as well. So let's come here and call the nav and say we want the background should be RGB. You can use the same colors that I am using, 65. This one should be 64, 64, and this one should be 64 as well. Alright, so let me close this. Alright, so that's the color I want, and we can see that manifesting over here. So I would want the position to be fixed, in that when we scroll, it should still remain at the same place like in the finished project. You see, when we scroll, it doesn't go away just as the main body does. So I'm going to set the position to fix, the top 0 z index, the z index should be 0 as well. Then the width should be 100 view width. I think that's all for our navigation. I think that's fine. So now, after dealing with this navigation container, we can now come and deal with our div class over here, which contains the left and then the right nav. So we would call it by the same name that we gave it over here, which is the nav container. So anytime you want to style a container or an element in your HTML file, you have to always mention the name or call out the protocol of that particular element. So in our case, we are going to style the nav container. So you say dot nav container, and then what do we want to do over here? We want to display the items as flex. So we want to display them as flex. Now we can't see clearly where the sign in button is, but initially it was down over here. Now it is by the side because of this flex display that we have set it to be. And from the finished project, we can see that they've been set apart to extreme right and extreme left respectively. So let's do the same thing by justifying content, and we'll say space between. So now we also have our sign in over here at the extreme right, and then the winter wines at the extreme left. Let's continue, and then let's set the padding to 8 rem, 0.8 rem, and see what happens. Now we can see that there is some space from this margin to here. We have some space. It's not setting itself on the last corner of the whole page. Now we can set the margin to 0 on the top and down and 3 rem on the left and right. So now we can see the difference clearly. We can see the movement from this side to this side, and the same thing for this one, the sign in button as well. So I think this is okay for the nav container. And the next thing we would want to deal with is the H3 over here, our logo. So let's do some styling on that one too, and then we'll say nav container, then we deal with nav left H3, because this H3 is found inside the nav left, and then the nav left is found inside the nav container. So we have a very long name over here. You can try other ways out to see whether it works. If yours is simpler, then hooray. But the simple analogy is that this H3 is found inside the nav left, and then the nav left is found inside the nav container. So now we are going to attack that and then set the color to white. So let's see what happens. Yes, we have the white color over here. So I think that's all that we are going to do for the H3. So let's copy this and attack the span tag inside the H3. So let's set the color to red, just as we have it in our finished product. So we have the same thing over here. The color should be red. I think that's all for now. We don't need anything more to be done. So now I think we can deal with the nav right, which contains the sign in. So now let's say nav container dot nav right, and then what we want to edit or customize or style is the anchor tag. So the anchor tag is found in this P tag over here. So we are going to attack the P, then A. So we are first thing we should do is set the color to white. Let's see whether that worked. Yes, it did work. And then we'll say text decoration should be none, because in the finished project we don't have this underlined. We don't have it underlined over here. So the text decoration should be none. And then we have the background should be gray. Let me see. Yes, we have the background as gray. Let me shift this here a little bit so that we can see what's happening to it. What else do we need to do? Let's set the padding to 0.3 rem on the top and down, and let's say 0.5 rem on the left and right. Okay, that's good. But on the finished product, we have the edges curved a little bit. So let's set the border radius to 6 pixels. 6 pixels. Let's see what happens. Yes, we got it, just as we have in the finished project. So our project is almost looking at like what we have in the finished project. But you can see that in the finished project, when we hover on the sign in button, the color changes from gray to white, and then the text changes from white to black. So let's do that right now. Let's do that. Let's try that and see. So we are going to say on hover. Let me copy all this. Let me copy that and paste over here. We would say on hover, the color should be changed from white to black, and then the background should be changed from gray to white, just as we have in the finished project. And then we should add some transition to it. Let me see. Let me show you what that does. So now when I do this, when I hover on it, the color changes from gray to white in the background and white to black on the text. But we can see that the change is very rapid and sharp. So let's add a transition so that it slows the pace or the rate of change down a little bit. So let's slow that down by saying transition, let's say all 0.8 seconds ease. Let's see what happens. Okay, so now it's not as fast as it used to be. So I think with this, we are done with our nav container. We have this over here, that over here, just as it is in the finished project. So we can now move on to this section as well, where we have these links over here. I'm going to find a name to name this section, and then we put in our various links or buttons with this nice hover effect, just as we did for the sign in button. So let's move on to create that also. So I'm going to call this section our body top menu. So we are having our menu buttons on the top side of our body. You can name it anything you want, but always make sure when it's time for you to do the styling, you remember what exactly you name your container, and then you call that protocol as well. Okay, so without much ado, let's start. So I'm going to create my body top container, and be mindful, we are not creating these names with space. That's why I have the underscore and then the hyphen in between various texts. So since this is going to be a container, let me bring my container over here. So now we can space this out. Let me give more space over here so that we can differentiate between what we are doing. So as we can see, we have list of items over here that are links to different pages. So in our subsequent videos, we may be creating all these pages to make our website a full website that can be deployed. So we are going to create an unordered list, which is a UL. We'll call it UL. And then in this UL, we are going to create various lists that are going to be links to other pages. So I'm going to create the first one, that is li, and then using an anchor tag a, let's hash ref this to nothing. Since we've not created the page yet, I'm going to put in my hash over there. Then we have discover new wines, stores and producers, wines, grapes. Okay, let's do that right now. Discover new wines. Then the next one, let me just copy this and paste. Let me paste that over here, over here, over here, over here. So I think this is enough. Now let me edit this. Let's say stores and producers. So the third link is going to be wines. So we can see the change ongoing over here in our website. We can see the change clearly. The next one is going to be grapes. The next one is going to be spirits. Then we are going to have our stores, a link to our stores. Let me make this capital. All right, let me see. Okay, so that's the last one. So I can come here and delete all these ones. All right, so now we have a list of links over here, and we can see that they are all present on our web page, but we would want them to align themselves this way, not this way. So what we are going to do is that, let me make this capital. We are going to do some styling on this container as well. So it would come to our CSS file and then call the body tag. Then we attack the body top menu. All right. So the first thing we would want to do is that we should set a background color to differentiate this from this, but that color shouldn't be so far from this one. So let's set the background as RGB, and then 179. The first one should be 179. The next one should be 176. Then the next one should be 176 as well. You can decide to use the colors that I am using, or you can decide to use your own colors. Now let's set the padding to 1 rem. Okay, so let's call this menu instead. Menu, body top menu, not container. So we have our body top menu over here. So we are not seeing the changes over here. What's wrong? What's wrong? Okay, so we call this the container instead, which should be the menu, not the container. All right, so now we have our changes over here. We have the background, and then we have the padding set to 1 rem, and we have the background as this color. So now what we have to do now is to address the elements that are inside this UL tag. Okay, so we are going to do that by saying body top menu UL. So the first thing we are going to do is to display flex, just like we did for the first one, the nav container. We are going to display flex, and we see the changes over here. And then we are going to say flex direction should be row. Okay, we already have that. Then let's justify content to space between. Okay, now we have the space in between, like the finished project. So we are going to set the margin to 10 rem. Let's see. Okay, we have the margin to 10 rem. Now let me make this 0. Okay, so let me see. Okay, that's it. Let me make it 0.7 rem. 0.7 rem. All right, so that's good. And then the padding should be 0.5 rem. Okay, then this one can be 0. Let me make this 0. All right, that's great. And then the margin top, will I need that? Let me make that 3 rem and see. Nope, that's way too much. I think I can take that off. So we have a body top menu looking almost like the finished project over here. So now let's go ahead and style the anchor tags itself and see how best it's going to look. So now I'm going to copy all these things. And then paste over here. But this time I'm not interested in the UL itself. I'm interested in the list items anchor tag. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to take off the underline from the text. So I'm going to say text decoration is none, and then we would say the background, I'll set the background to white like we have in the finished project. Yes, this way. And then the text color itself should be black. The color itself, the color of the text should be black. And let me set the padding to 0.3 rem on top and down, and 0.8 rem on the left and right. Now, like the first one, let me set the border radius to 6 pixels. All right, I think our work is almost looking like the finished project. And okay, so we have this over here like this, almost like our finished project. But in our finished project, we can see that when we hover on the buttons, we have the colors changing, like the sign in button as well. So let's do that. Let's do the hover effect. So I'm going to copy this and then I'll paste it over here. Hover. On hover, I want the background to be, I want it to be black, and then I want the text color to be white, and then the transition should be all 0.8s ease. So let me see what we did. Yes, this is exactly what I'm looking for, just like the finished project. Okay, so I think we are done with this. Let me see. Yes, we are done with that. So the next thing we are going to style, or we are going to create, is this big banner that we have over here for our advertisement and our message to our customers who visit our page.